Welcome to the Friends of Walter Utt. This is an unusual organization that springs to life once a year with only one goal, and that is to keep alive the memory of Walter Utt, a teacher who shaped many people's lives. In fact, sometimes I hear us talking about PUC's mission, and I think you could summarize PUC's mission very simply. It's PUC's mission to unleash teachers like Walter Utt, who are determined to show students the context for our Christian belief in the larger civilization. What I'd like to talk about today to this group, the Friends of Walter Utt, is Walter Utt as teacher. Some of you know I'm working on a biography of Walter Utt. I've written a chapter dealing with his philosophy of history. I've written another chapter about his interpretation of PUC history, and now I've come to a chapter that I find rather challenging, and that is Walter Utt as teacher, how he taught. Walter Utt's students invariably described him as a powerful classroom presence. They spoke of his ability to create a compelling narrative, ask probing questions, and teach thoroughgoing realism about great men and magnificent issues. Unused to a teacher who relished irony and enjoyed puncturing pretense, sophomores struggled to describe what he did. They reached for imprecise words like cynical, or in the case of a few precocious ones, iconoclastic, although such labels obscured as much as they revealed. Above all, students remembered his wit and his entertaining off-the-cuff judgments about people and problems on campus or in the news of the world. His classroom performance was unlike anything they'd ever seen. One student remembered, "How did I luck into this?" Walter's classes featured his mind and personality in full engagement with the students. He might move with little warning from complex exposition, a kind of vivid, old-fashioned lecture demanding serious attention and rapid note-taking, to discussion and debate. Sometimes people talk about the old-fashioned kind of lecture in a stereotypical way. They talk about the teacher as the sage on the stage, purveying canned information to a kind of passive audience. Well, that never existed in Utt's classroom. The man on the stage might at any moment move into the audience, invite them into the drama, or rewrite the script. Even in an off day, when he was tired or plagued by pain, Walter Utt might say something that a few students would remember for the rest of their lives. "He taught the way I think," observed Victor Agard, a history major and now a retired tax lawyer, noting how Utt used striking individual stories to illuminate broad historical themes. It simply did not occur to Walter that everything he did could be measured, and if he couldn't measure something, it wasn't real. One way to grasp his teaching style is to look at the culmination of his classes. A present-day reader of his examination questions, for example, which are now included in the voluminous Walter Utt papers preserved at Pacific Union College, comes away both amused and intrigued. Though he used many objective questions, it was his essay questions that students remembered after test week. Here's one. In 1945, or at least 1919, the sun never set on the British Empire, yet according to some critics, a failure of economy, nerve, and resources has reduced the British Kingdom something near the third world level, asked at upper division test in 1984. How so? Or have there been encouraging developments which indicate a more positive British role in today's world, besides or not limited to punk rock, the miniskirt, and Princess Diana? In another test, this is one of his last tests. When a revolution grows older, how can missionary zeal and commitment be maintained in the party bureaucracy and the younger generation who do not personally remember the heroic days? Mao preached, I should say, a permanent revolution. Is this possible? A few students may have wondered if Dr. Utt had other applications in mind, perhaps including the challenge of maintaining the founding ideals in a school like PUC. Another exam, 1967, he presented students with this challenge. Presumably, public as well as private virtues are desirable in political leaders. Were high ideals and ethics helpful or a hindrance in the Europe of the 1860s and 70s? You may use such figures as Bismarck, Cavour, Pius IX, or Napoleon III as case histories. Attempting a long view, can you determine whether morality is essential, an embarrassment, or irrelevant in international politics? Wow, that's a question you'll remember long after exam day. By the 1970s, Utt often decorated his exams with lively and provocative political cartoons, often from Punch or French satirical publications. The man at the head of a table in a Washington conference declares, "I blame everything on the Russians except for the few things, Stacy, I blame on you." Now, Utt's lectures are difficult to recreate, though many of his notes have survived. Eyewitnesses, like the people here celebrating the Friends of Walter Utt, eyewitnesses remember note cards, scraps of paper in his hand, or lying on the lectern, but nothing like a sheaf of papers or a neatly typed manuscript. In any case, Utt never gave the same lecture twice, even if there exists an outline of a version of the lecture as it was given the first time, perhaps. The lectures are built around questions, punctuated regularly with colorful, revealing quotations from key historical actors. Utt's favorite subjects involved ancien regimes, revolutionary challenges, especially in his beloved France and in Russia. He was intrigued with the age of reason and radical attempts to begin the world anew, and somehow, as he invoked the rich complexity of the past, he captured his students' imagination. Unlike some of his colleagues, he did not construct his lectures around inert lists of facts and faceless factors. And even at the end of his career, he never used the time to tell rambling anecdotes about himself. His themes usually had a strong flavor of irony, the unintended consequences of ambitious reform or ventures of conquest, the cocksure prophecy that turned out to be false, the recurring and predictable shortcomings of human nature, and the gap between appearances and reality, theory and practice. Students in Utt's classes did not emerge mouthing easy slogans about changing the world or eager to enlist in the latest cultural revolution to suppress old thinking. The literary scholar Alan Jacobs has recently protested the strange current outlook which rejects the possibility of learning from the imperfect past. Too many of his students, he writes, have created a catch-all category that might be called all history hitherto, like a soul entering Dante's hell. They look at the past and abandon all hope. History is bad, a sewer or a slaughterhouse of racism, sexism, and imperialism that must be repudiated. Utt looked back zestfully, readier to break into a wry smile than to shout a Jeremiad or vandalize a monument. He loved the subjects he studied, relishing British and French ceremony, America's rowdy politics, Christianity's calculating and imperfect saints, and PUC's legends, to name just a few examples. He was ready to admire flawed men and women, people who kept their heads up in the storm, striving to be honest, or in Adventist terms, to live up to the light they had. There was an undercurrent of joy to his realism, his lack of illusions. His students needed to create their own personal sympathies, he believed, not simply to learn and repeat someone else's interpretation, forcing the facts to fit a kind of bed of theory. He enjoyed laying out a range of possible interpretations and asking his students to join the debate and come up with a synthesis. Napoleon has been variously described as an inhuman monster, a compulsive liar, a far-sighted and pragmatic statesman who healed religious and political divisions, a military genius, and much else. Encouraging his students to engage conflicting evidence, he asked, when he said he was the revolution, what did he mean? Do you think he was a revolutionary or a counter-revolutionary? In some courses, he completely dispensed with any assigned reading, sending his students to the library to do extensive collateral reading. As upper division students, he told them, you are expected to bring to your reading certain critical faculties, along with the ability to express your thoughts. Now, there are very few recordings that have been preserved of his lectures. We do have some. But much of what we know about Walter Utt's teaching comes from the testimony of his students. Throughout his 33 years at Pacific Union College, the discipline of history was always recognized as a central part of the curriculum, providing essential information for every educated person. Colleagues in sociology, psychology, religion, and literature counted on a basic knowledge of history as the crucial foundation of their students' later, more advanced learning. The history department grew steadily under his leadership, ultimately reaching a faculty of 6, including Eric Syme, a teacher with a shared appointment in theology. The training of future historians, future professional historians, was never the focus of Utt's department, though over the years several distinguished historians did emerge from the unpretentious, map-decorated classrooms of Irwin Hall. Most of the time, history served as a liberal arts initiation for future doctors, lawyers, civil servants, or businessmen. Utt saw himself as preparing them for life, forcing them to think, and bestowing the tools of citizenship suitable to a free society. He assumed, moreover, that he was teaching his students essential information, specific knowledge rooted in a detailed understanding of the French Revolution or the Protestant Reformation or Marxism in theory or practice. It never occurred to him that this step could be skipped, leaping directly to wisdom or fact-free critical thinking. For all his enthusiasm about history and his wry tolerance of the shortcomings of historical figures, he was not infinitely patient. With certain rare, intransigent students, indeed, his habitual good humor wore thin. If a student approached him with unyielding suspicion, determined to believe that Utt was a dangerous heretic, deviously seeking to undermine the faith of his charges, he grew short and acerbic. It sorely tried his calm, to give another example, when a devotee of the John Birch Society, with a firmly conspiratorial view of the world, took class after class from him, regularly witnessing to his political faith. At the time of his death in 1985, Walter had taught almost everything in the department's curriculum, including political science courses, introductory sociology, denominational history, as well as the survey courses in American history and Western civilization, and a wide range of upper division courses in European history, from Plato to NATO, as the history teacher's joke goes. He was willing to prepare new courses as needed, and he expected his colleagues to do the same. But that is not exactly what I studied in graduate school, was a statement he was unwilling to accept from them. And now I need your help. Students were a little bit in awe of Walter Utt. They were somewhat intimidated. But I think of something that Walter Utt did when he wrote the history of the college. He sent out a general invitation to people who attended Healdsburg College. And he said, tell me what it was like. Tell me your memories. Tell me the remarkable things that happened to you. Tell me how your life was changed. As I write this chapter on how Walter Utt taught, I would like the friends of Walter Utt to communicate with me. Send me an email, send me a letter, send me a note. Tell me what it was like to be Walter Utt's student and why so many of you say again and again, He was a teacher who changed my life. I'm looking forward to getting those messages from the friends of Walter Utt and hearing from you just how this powerful teacher affected your life. I'll be checking my email. Thank you.